Hey everybody, welcome to the I303 podcast. I'm your host, David Prieto. We're here, we talk about interesting insights and oddball opinions from the perspective of an IO. With me today, I have Dr. Frank Olmos, and we're going to be talking about some pretty interesting topics, particularly AI and how it applies into the HR world and or IO world, with a focus on the public sector. So with that said, Dr. Frank Olmos, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about yourself, your background experiences, and how you came about and into contact with AI.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you for this opportunity. So I got into HR honestly almost by accident. Basically, I just graduated from UCLA. I wanted a full-time job. I started applying to everywhere. I knew I was going to work in the government or public sector. I just started applying all these places. And then I got this phone call, and it was from Montebello Unified, and they said, "Come on over for an interview. Mr. Fuentes is like interested in interviewing you." And I go over there, and I honestly thought it was going to be for a clerical assistant 3, which I applied, or even a clerical assistant 2. And then I got interviewed, and then after I interviewed and I answered the questions, he just stood up and said, "Okay, process this guy, process him." And then and then I get processed, and all this time, the whole time I'm getting processed, I thought it was for clerical assistant too. And then I go, and then I'm looking at the paperwork and it says HR specialist. I'm like, what? I didn't apply for this one.
Yeah,
I
what's going on here?
didn't apply for that one. Anyway, that's what started my whole career in human resources. So from Montebello Unified, I went to LA County Office of Education. I worked in personal commission there for about 17 years. So, and then, I've done some other work in education research, community schools. Ultimately, I circled back to personal commission, human resources work. I started my new role here at Bellflower Unified as executive director of personnel commission. I started in January. I also do consulting. I do most of my consulting work goes in training. So I started. I've been training. I've been doing trainings for a while. I've like let's say multiple choice training, item analysis, job analysis, competency modeling.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, because of my interest and expertise in the I integrated those two worlds. Now I'm doing a lot of AI training. So uh, basically, the way I learned AI is just by TikTok, and
There you
uh,
go.
and then I saw, my goodness, this is awesome technology, and I just started using it every day ever since I learned about it, and I just merged those two worlds, and that's what I've been doing. So anyway, that's an overview. I'm sure we'll be
Yeah.
touching more about other things, but at least you know where I came from and where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So we'll start kind of with the big picture first. AI, it comes with a lot of baggage, if you will, as we're sharing with how to embrace it and utilize it within the workplace. And some organizations, I know in the private sector, they're much more aggressive with being able to embrace AI. In the public sector, maybe not as much. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you see as potentially some of the hurdles or inhibitors for individuals who work in the public sector to be willing to embrace or start utilizing AI.
Sure. So the biggest obstacle that I've seen is that you don't know where the data is going. You don't know where the information is this AI thing. Like I type in these prompts. I want to be extra careful, especially in the public sector. We're constantly surrounded and we use a lot of sensitive, confidential information. So we have this public trust that we make sure that ultimately a contract with the public that we make sure that any information that we have it's going to be protected. And so there's a lot of hesitancy. So that's one big one, the personal identifiable information. The other thing too is just people just are probably just it's just fearful of the unknown. And also and just not fully aware what it is or what it is all about. So there's a lot of that going on. I've seen people who tried it out and they say, "Yeah, I tried it. I don't understand what's the big deal about
Yeah.
it." My take is that they haven't been using it right, but But I so far it's been the type of information we have, and also how we have to follow certain protocols in public sector, certain procedures.
Hmm.
We tend not to branch out on things where on the private sector it's actually inherent. You have to always advance. You always have
Yeah,
to continuously
yeah,
improve, or else you're going to be pretty much out of the business.
yeah.
Not so much in the public sector, but at least we can see the private sector and they're trailblazing these pathways, and we can see
Yeah.
what they're doing, and then we could always borrow what they're doing to the public sector.
Gotcha. And so when it comes to identifiable data, to what extent is that a serious concern or a serious consideration? I know there is the perception that, you know, once I put in this data of mine, it's going to feed the entire algorithm and everybody's going to know everything about me. Is there any validity to that? Is that a legitimate concern?
Well, there is some. It was a newspaper article talking about what happened to Samsung, for example. There was something where Samsung started using ChatGPT and it was proprietary information, and somehow it got out. It was highly confidential, it got out. I think it was still in the early development of AI. I'm sure they have implemented guardrails or things to protect it. But the thing is that these are private services, private firms where you don't know where the data is going. I mean, there's
Gotcha.
solutions that can alleviate these situations, but you don't know where it's going. So the validity is that that situation, and
Mhm.
and people hear about that, and that's the last. And all you really need is that one case that really spoils so many different things. But
Yeah, yeah.
people are fully aware. But the thing is that we don't know. We don't know.
Mhm.
Even if let's say if it wasn't for that newspaper article documenting the Samsung situation, we don't know where it's going. So it's that there's an element of that too.
Gotcha. So I'm going to pose kind of an interesting question. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So individuals, it sounds as though they're very open to, you know, putting their own personal information, whether it's in social media, specifically either Facebook, Instagram, I know more recently TikTok. It seems as though individuals are comfortable with Amazon constantly monitoring their shopping habits, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. Same thing with Netflix. They're
Mhm,
able to track over time what
mhm.
people are interested in and not interested in. So even in today's world, is there even the idea of privacy anymore? Is that still a concern that we should take seriously?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but I think
Yeah.
we need to separate um, what is personal versus
Gotcha.
and versus what my personal data, because I choose to put my stuff out there, like
Mhm.
LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, yes, but we're dealing with other people's information here.
Gotcha.
So,
Good point.
yeah, I mean, I could put I mean, I use AI. I constantly put
Yeah.
my stuff, like I put my address or my thoughts, etc. But again, since we have other people's information, like for example, applications. So in human resources, when people
Mhm.
apply for jobs, it's confidential. They don't
Gotcha.
know. And we don't release that information to anybody. I mean, unless there's like some internal staff members, but we don't release that to anybody else because we don't want that person, other people to know if they apply for a job. Sometimes that can provide some key issues or risk or very tough situations for them. So anyway, bottom line is that we don't release other people's information.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
No, that makes total sense. As you were
yeah,
sharing, I'm like, yeah, that's right. If I want to volunteer, it's on me, but I can't volunteer someone else's without their consent or approval.
exactly. Yeah.
So, being that in the public sector, there is that concern with data privacy, confidentiality, what recommendations do you have if the public sector wanted to still embrace AI, but also being aware of we need to be really careful and really monitor how we're approaching it? Do you have any best practices or recommendations?
Yeah, and I do AI trainings, and I talk about this. I do AI training specifically for public sector HR employees, by the way. But anything that I've been teaching pretty much can be applicable to any department. So the
Okay.
key thing that I say is to de-identify the information. Like remove anything. Like if you're going to be including information or uploading or in the prompt or whatever you're going to include in the AI, make sure you de-identify it, remove anything that is identifiable. If you can, put like a fake name, put Jane Doe, John Doe. You want to put something in place of that, that doesn't specifically identify that person. Remove anything that is address, phone numbers, especially,
Mm.
social security numbers or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Highly sensitive, highly identifiable. Remove all of that, and then you can always upload it and get the prompt. So it's not really needed. So AI doesn't really care about who it is. It's really about the situation. I'll give you an example. You can have like a performance management situation where you're asking AI to help you
Mm.
out to deal with how to address it, how to talk or communicate with that situation. It's not necessary to put that it's actually,
Me. Yeah,
yeah,
David Prieto.
it's
Yeah.
David Prieto.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could just I could put David
Yeah.
Rose
Yeah.
or slash Prieto.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the key thing is to de-identify. It doesn't care, but the situation, you could put the context and everything, and it gives you the same output. So like screening applications, the application contains a lot of
Right.
personal, identifiable, even sensitive information. So you want to, if you're going to use it for screening apps, for example, make sure you remove all of that, and then put it in the AI. By the way, there's a trick.
Yeah.
A technology person provided me with a trick. They said, so we have Google Suite Gemini here at the office. I just got linked to the Google Gemini, I guess, enterprise version or something that is highly secure. It's not going to be connected
Mm.
outside. So one thing is that, but Gemini is not, sometimes it's not the best AI
Yeah.
service or AI chatbot. So one thing he told me that he does is that he uploads the information that contains identifiable information, and you ask a Gemini, please remove anything
Oh,
identifiable. Okay,
okay.
so regenerate this information, but remove anything identifiable, or replace it with some generic name,
Yeah.
and then it'll give you that output, which allows you to copy and paste it to something else, like it could be ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek, you name it. At
Yeah.
least make sure you review it before you do it, and then you can copy and paste it somewhere else and see, and then that gives you at least a way to, an efficient way to
Yeah.
use to easily de-identify the information, and then use another AI that is out there.
That is a huge tip because I was trying to evaluate in one of my earlier in my career. This was when AI was just coming out. We were using an internal only version of AI called
Hmm.
Azure AI,
Mm,
and we were interviewing. I guess that's a Microsoft product.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not,
it sounds
that's
like
not
it.
my,
Azure
yeah,
is Microsoft, by the way, but go
that's
ahead.
not my
Yeah.
world. But with that, so I was trying to upload again. This was during the time where we weren't sure how to remove personally identifiable information. So I was literally deleting line by line, and
Yeah.
this is taking forever.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you shared that tip where you
Yeah.
can actually put it into AI and have it do it for you where it takes it out. So
Exactly. So have kind of like what I said. So
yeah,
have a secured AI system in place, and it may not be the best, but at least it's good enough to
yeah,
remove that identifiable
yeah,
information, and then take
yeah,
that to something
yeah.
to another AI.
I wish I would have known that back then because it took me, I don't know, a couple of hours to go line by line. Okay, is there an address here? Is there a
Yeah.
last name here? Is there a
Yeah.
phone number here?
Exactly.
And it's like, oh man. So yeah, great pro tip.
Hmm.
So leading into the example you were sharing about potentially putting a employee relations or performance management conversation into AI and getting recommendations, of course, removing de-identifiable, de
That's okay.
I'm gonna fumble that throughout this conversation.
De-identified.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
removing that information.
Yeah.
I've gotten some feedback or insight that AI can't replace the human touch. What I mean by that is I've gotten, or it's been shared with me, that AI can't be as empathetic, it can't be as sympathetic, it is just cold, calculated, and it doesn't know how best to deliver some potentially critical information. Can AI be used to kind of soften the blow a little bit?
Yeah, first of all, I disagree with that.
Okay.
And I wholeheartedly disagree. And the reason for that is because it depends how your AI is trained.
Gotcha.
You can train it to be empathetic. And most of our AI services, like our AI chatbots, and when I say AI chatbots, I'm referring to ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, DeepSeek, we have Grok. What's another one? Another good one is called Manus, by the way.
Okay.
Just want to put that out there. A lot of them are trained to be either empathetic, sympathetic, professional. They're already pre-trained. And so when you hear people saying that this is something like AI, they're pretty cold, they're pretty
Hmm.
straightforward, they're pretty dry. They're not going to be sounding like they're not sounding like humans. I totally disagree because they're trained by humans. A
Gotcha.
lot of the content that they're trained from is from human writings. And so and they train it in a way that it's going to give you a very what we call sympathetic output.
Yeah.
So and so I'll just disagree with that. And
Okay.
what in fact what I've seen, and this is something that I have encountered multiple times, is that it helps you become or sound more human.
Hmm.
I think it's interesting because in HR, in human resources, we have to be very legalistic.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we follow protocols. We
Hmm.
want to make sure we follow the rules. So there's not much wiggle room with our communications. They tend to be very dry.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
tend to be very straightforward and very direct where if you were to work with an AI or have AI help you, you can broaden your parameters of your style, of your writing style, while still maintaining your firmness of whatever you're trying to communicate. So I've encountered a situation where people don't know how to talk or write about a
Yeah.
performance management issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so most people resort or revert to their very direct, very dry, practical style, where they say, okay, we have issues with your performance. Unfortunately, you're not going to pass probation. Thank you very much for your service. You may leave now. I mean, very straight, very
Yeah.
dry,
Yeah.
doesn't really do much with connecting with the worker in a humane, emotional manner. And so you can have AI help you talk like that. And then some things, and also it could be something that you may not have a lot of practice or you haven't
Hmm.
not developed that writing style or that ability where AI can help you with that. And so I've heard it multiple times where people have used AI to sound more human,
That's
which is
interesting.
so
Yeah.
ironic
Yeah.
because these are not humans,
Yeah.
but at least they're trained by humans, which can help you sound more like a human.
Gotcha. And so if I'm listening correctly, it sounds as though we can dial it up or dial it down in terms of more sympathetic versus less sympathetic, or more formal versus more formal. Would that be a fair way to?
Yeah, yeah. So you can you type in your prompt, you can give it context. That's part of what I train too, is like you want to give there's a whole pyramid that I provide as part of my
Mhm.
trainings that,
Okay.
different levels of that at least it gives your AI chatbot enough information or good information to give you a good result. So ultimately, when you type in the prompt, you give it context, and then it gives you a message, and then you evaluate it. You say, okay, does this sound like me, or this is what I want to sound like,
Yeah.
and then exactly what you said, David. So you could always say that I can you sound more sympathetic, or
Mm,
can you be more professional, or
yeah.
it could be can you be more informal? Can you be more practical? Can you speak in layman's terms? It could be a number of things that you want to have a certain style, a certain tone that you want to achieve, but ultimately it's that exchange with your AI chatbot that you go back and forth, ultimately to get it right how you want to sound.
Gotcha. And so earlier in the conversation, you touched about or touched upon a couple of different, I guess, AIs. I don't even know what we call it,
Hmm.
different versions, different systems,
Yeah.
different AIs. So you mentioned ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, a couple of others. Out of all the ones you've used, which one would you say is your favorite or the one you lean into the most?
Well, currently my favorite is Claude, which is by
Okay.
Anthropic, and the reason for that is just I think the writing style, the output seems to be very consistent to what I want. I what I do sometimes is like I have a particular goal or a particular project. I use the same prompt for multiple models or
Okay.
chatbots. I upload the same content, let's say for ChatGPT. I put the same prompt. I do the same thing for Claude. I do the same thing for Perplexity, DeepSeek, and Grok. And then what I do, I just press enter and submit it for all of these. And then I look, okay, which one closely
Okay.
achieves what I want to achieve? And
Okay.
Claude seems to be the most consistent. Now, it depends. Sometimes ChatGPT wins, sometimes Grok wins, but Claude seems to be the most consistent to what I'm looking for, which is great. I mean, it could be an email, for
Yeah.
example. So I did the same experiment. I uploaded with the long email exchange. I make sure I de-identified, of course, but a long email exchange, and I put it in all these different models, and then some. I even put it in Gemini, and Gemini sometimes just like goes somewhere in a foul territory.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like totally doesn't even get what I'm trying to achieve here. ChatGPT, all right, pretty close. All right, pretty good too. And then Claude, I'm like, there you go, perfect.
Gotcha.
This is exactly what I wanted to say.
Gotcha. So I'm not as familiar with Claude, but does it function kind of similarly? I'm most familiar with ChatGPT and Gemini. So is it kind of the
Yeah,
same approach, same process? Okay.
exactly. Pretty much all of these different models. By the way, there's models within models. So ChatGPT, even if there's like a drop down menu of all, like you have like O1, O4. There's like all these. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
Yeah.
there's like different models. Says even it gives you a brief description of what this model is all about. Like it says fast response, decent reasoning, or something. Or like, oh, this one is
Yeah.
like just advanced reasoning. So you have to pick and choose your model, even within ChatGPT. But yeah, to answer your question, it's the same interaction, same style. Basically, there is a field on the bottom, and then that's where you type in your prompt. You can copy and paste it. And then also most of them have the ability to upload files. So you can drag and drop things that you want to give it additional context, give it additional training, and it gives you a much more richer response.
Gotcha. So it's also able to tap into the documents you're uploading into, I guess, the interface to be able to answer whatever questions you might have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with that, I'm starting to wonder if there's anything AI can't do in terms of what we as employees or people can do. So what are your thoughts on that? I see potentially us either leaning heavily
Hmm.
into AI
Hmm.
or, giving thanks to our AI masters. What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Pretty much AI is at this rate is going to be capable of doing everything
Wow.
as long in terms of thought process, okay? At least for now. I mean then we're down the line we're probably going to integrate this with robotics and humanoids. We'll see where we're
Yeah.
going to go with that.
Yeah.
But at least in terms of at least generative AI, pretty much if it requires intelligence, it's capable of doing it. The only thing that AI cannot do, which is really, I don't think it's possible. It's really the human validation aspect, the human validation, the human evaluation part. Basically saying that whatever it gives you, you have to determine if
Mm,
it's if and evaluate it and say this is good, this is great, edit this, remove that. Ultimately, it's up to you as the, let's say, take ownership really of its output. And
gotcha.
you bring AI, I mean, AI ultimately does not have your life experience unless you have that in some kind of flash drive that you can upload. And I don't think we're there yet. Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows if that's going to be even possible down the line? But ultimately, it doesn't have your life journey. It doesn't have your life experience unless you put that in there or you package it up and somehow upload it. But ultimately, there's just so much in there that it doesn't have. It can't be packaged enough, because there's so much years of experience, years of learning, years of wisdom. So that's the part that AI at this time is lacking. And that's where we
Gotcha.
come in. We come in because we are the ones, the sole decision makers to ultimately decide whatever output that AI produces. It's going to be evaluated by me or a group of people to say, and also ultimately say, this is great, this is good, this is consistent, this is aligned, this is what we.
And so, being that there is multiple AI systems interaction, again, I don't know what to call
Mhm,
it, but multiple AIs,
mhm,
do you see this as kind of a winner take all, where there's going to be one that just kind of takes the ball and just runs with it? We saw this kind of with search, where it
yeah.
was basically Google. They took over the game with Google search. I mean, I remember Netscape, there was Explorer, there was Safari, but eventually virtually what 90% of all search online was through Google. And I think we see a change right now. Do you think there's going to be kind of something similar where there's that one AI that just dominates and kind of takes everything?
That's an interesting question. By the way, I went to the dentist yesterday, and then he asked me a similar question.
Yeah.
And then the way I answered that question is like, well, and by the way, you also bring up an interesting point about Google because yes, Google has been pretty much dominating that
Yeah.
space. I would say uh, it's so competitive, and it's all about how you train your models. Now, there's going to be a lot of variation. I mean, there's even if you go to ChatGPT, for example, there's different, or what we call different GPTs
Yeah.
that people have trained it with. And so there's a wide variety of GPTs even within ChatGPT
Yeah.
because this one's more trained to, let's say, poetry. This one's more trained to help you with your English. This one's trained to be more human resources oriented. So to answer your question, I think it's going to be similar to how we have car brands. Okay, so we're going to have our Toyotas, we're going to have our
Mhm.
Mercedes, we're going to have our Nissans. And then even within each car brand, you're going to have your SUVs, you're going to have your electric cars, you're going to have your four-wheel drives, your
Yeah.
Subarus,
Off-wheelers. Yeah.
off-wheelers, you have your Tundras. So I'm like, I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a wide variety of AIs out there.
Okay.
Now, yes, I think there's going to be one that will emerge as probably the most popular, similar like a Toyota.
Okay.
There's always going to be reliable.
Yeah.
It's my go-to model or AI chatbot. There's going to be things like that. Yeah, but ultimately it's going to be dependent on your circumstances, your situation, and I really like to use, and this is something I also bring up when I teach statistics, by the way. I forgot to mention that, by the way. I teach
Yeah.
statistics at Cal State LA. But
Okay.
I say like all of these chatbots are going to be like tools. Like in statistics, you have all of these types of formulas. You have standard
Gotcha.
deviation, you have hypothesis testing. Basically, these are tools. These are tools to enhance whatever you are working with, or to enhance you ultimately, to enhance your at least or problem solve. You're going to have a wide variety of tool set. In this case, AI models. For this situation, oh yeah, ChatGPT. Pretty much it's like your Swiss Army knife of all situations. I get it. But
Gotcha.
sometimes you need a very specific tool for your situation. Sometimes you need a soldering gun or you need a specific wrench of this size. So you may go to, okay, let me go to Claude for this one. Let me go to DeepSeek with this one. Let me go to Manus for this one. So the key thing is that you want to be familiar of this whole AI ecosystem. and just know the strengths and weaknesses of each one, so you can make those type of decisions of which one's the right model, AI model for your circumstance.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, now I'm gonna dig in a little bit deeper in terms of your experience at Cal State LA. So I know, well, I've been out of school for a little while, so I don't know what the perception is on AI in school. How does Cal State LA react to that? How does the university system react to that? Are they leaning into it? Are they leaning away? What are your thoughts there?
I think it has evolved. It has evolved. I think it was a really almost a gut punch reaction, like when AI came out, because pretty much it can answer any question.
Yeah.
And I've
Which
seen,
why go to
yeah,
school? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I've seen it from my students, at least a couple or a few of
Okay.
my students, that you could just tell
Yeah.
that they answered with AI. Um, well, I'll tell you this, at least currently. Um, we do, as a professor there, we have free ChatGPT accounts, so
Okay.
they're leaning in. And then there's also, I even took a training course over there about how to integrate AI in your training course. Now, that's just me because I'm pretty very familiar with AI. I use it every day. Other professors are probably, I mean, you can have a wide variety of responses and
Yeah.
reactions. You're going to be, there's professors that probably they don't want AI.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think there's reason for that, and I'm not going to discount that. And I get it. I totally understand it. And I ultimately arrived to a at least a what we call maybe a decision or
Yeah.
a conclusion that a balanced approach is best. And the reason I say that is because you need to have a framework, you need to have a theory, you have to have a certain a knowledge base in your mind to evaluate what AI produces. You need to have that first.
Okay.
And so if you have AI spitting out all these responses, because I see that too. I see that when a couple of my students just like, okay, so there was a question about hypothesis testing, and most students just gives me like the two sentence answers, and that's good enough. And that's what I was looking for. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, these couple students gave me like a 3-page response, but not
Yeah.
only that, but performed the calculation, which I did not even ask. I was giving them a practical way of answering the question using the tools that I taught them already, and they gave me something totally different, highly sophisticated. I'm not even sure if it was the right answer, but bottom line is that it was a 3-page answer.
Yeah.
And so when I see that the student did not know enough to edit it, to review
Mhm.
it, to evaluate it. So we have to be very aware of how to incorporate AI, especially in education, because yes, we want to prepare our students to use AI. I mean, this is, I mean, this is kind of like seeping into the whole K-12 also, K-12
Mhm.
education. I know I'm focused on college right now,
Yeah.
but I mean, we want to have our students to be AI ready, AI at least skilled, and know how to use AI. But at the same time, they need to have foundational knowledge. It could be an English degree, or it could be English fundamentals, math
Mhm.
fundamentals, because whatever AI is going to produce you ultimately have to decide what is good and what is bad. If you have nothing in your mind that helps you with that decision making, you're just going to copy and paste it and assume it's good. And then you're going to have me saying, no, that's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I see this kind of in parallel with, so I'm going to relate this to politics a little bit. So I'm going to tiptoe over there,
Mhm.
but it'll bring us back.
Okay.
So this reminds me of individuals who they consume news either online or through social media. And it's difficult for them to interpret what is quote unquote true versus
Mm.
untrue. They're just absorbing whatever it is they're reading or seeing, and they're repeating it as gospel. I think
Mm.
this parallels with AI, where there's going to be a lot of information coming at us as individuals, but in both scenarios, we have to be our critical thinking has to level up so that when we can evaluate in both cases, whether it's AI, whether it's something I see on social media, which may eventually be created by AI,
Hmm.
what is quote unquote true or what is logical or what is reasonable based on both of those. Would that be a fair approach?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think ultimately we do need to have validation. Validation
Gotcha.
ultimately is validation and a reliable source of truth. Okay, so let me
Okay.
give you an example.
Yeah.
Perplexity, it's really good at referencing and citing where it got its
Okay.
information. Copilot does similar things too, where
Okay.
basically it actually gives you the link and citations of where it got its information.
Gotcha.
So, but ultimately, I think it is necessary to have a reliable, what we call source of truth.
There you go.
Now, these AI chatbots have been known to what we call hallucinate. And a quick story, an attorney, this was published in some kind of news article, that an attorney used ChatGPT to defend his case. And then like, oh, look at all these cases, look at all these court cases to support what I've been, telling everybody or telling, at least supporting my case. The judge took that information, analyzed it, and then basically found out that none of them are true. None of
Mm,
those case laws that he referenced are true. The ChatGPT hallucinated. So
gotcha.
yeah, so our critical thinking must be amplified much more highly because we need to evaluate what AI is going to give us. And it's going to require a whole new skill set, a whole new competency. It just emphasizes how important critical thinking is needed.
Hmm.
So going back to what you were saying, social media, people are just pretty much looking at all these different social media feeds. It could be Facebook, Instagram, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden they say this is true. That's where it
It's
gets problematic.
yeah.
Yeah, critical thinking has to play a critical part in us evaluating. Just because you saw it on Facebook or somebody shared it doesn't mean it's true. And
Yeah.
so you need to have these reliable sources
Yeah.
and pretty much a consensus of sources that these are what we call are true or truth. So in data, we always call it source of truth
Mm,
because you need to have that central reference point to say this is true. Because if you don't have that, whatever you compare it with, um, you can't say it's true or not. You need to have a reference point of truth. And so like in data analytics, we always call it source of truth. You need to have a source of truth. And so I think that should be applied in anything, in social media and definitely in AI. You need to have that reliable, valid source of truth that you can compare it with. Because if you don't have that, anything that AI spits out, can be deemed true, but it's not.
gotcha.
It potentially cannot.
Okay. So final question when it comes to AI in higher ed or in education in general. So AI is not necessarily a person. And so there may be students who simply copy and paste whatever,
Yeah.
AI spits out. Is that what I don't know if this has been finalized, but would that be considered plagiarism in terms of as a student, I'm claiming what this entity created is mine, but this is not a real, it's not a real person. I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, I, I see where you're going with this. I see what the purpose of that question is. What my thing is this, and especially since I use a lot of AI, I think we need just to be transparent about it.
Mm,
We need
okay.
to, and then I think I saw somewhere, I think I saw it in LinkedIn, where it gives you like an indicator, like how much of it was AI or how much it was, okay, so let's say 100% AI versus 0% AI or let's say 100% human, for example. Maybe we can have a label or something that to really be transparent about how much of AI consisted of this writing or this output that I'm giving you. I don't see plagiarism ultimately means is that it's somebody else's words. Now technically AI is
Yeah.
not a person. AI, honestly, AI doesn't even know what it's saying. If you
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't think it does. I think it's there's a lot of formulas and algorithms that is taking place that is giving you the most probable word or statement or paragraph or report that based on your prompt it's ultimately it's just calculations that it thinks that it's going to based on probabilities to give you what you want or what you're requesting. So a lot of AI is just it's thinking it's converting numbers into text. So
Gotcha.
there's a lot of all these calculations taking place. So my whole point is that AI doesn't even know what it's saying, but it's just based on probability. It gives you this information that at least complies to what you're asking it for it to do. Now
Gotcha.
you take that, let's say you take that, and then you say this is produced by me. So there might be an issue with that. Yeah, I get it, because technically something else produced it that you are representing that you produced it. At the same time, I think there's some value of how you interacted with your AI to get that in output.
Gotcha.
So there might be a balanced middle ground here. You can
Okay.
say, okay, yeah, I think yes, this came from my AI, but it was because of my skillful mastery of how to prompt. I was
Hmm.
able to get this from my AI.
Yeah.
And so I think there might be a way to kind of like meet at least both ends of the spectrum where you want to be transparent. You don't want to say that this all came from me. At least also you want to say that this came from AI. So there might be different categories. You can say like mostly AI assisted, moderately AI assisted. There was no AI assisted. At least put like some kind of label to say that this came from a combination or collaboration of between me and AI.
That's interesting. I actually think that's going to land pretty successfully. Look, I remember when I was in college, we had the turnitin.com
Hmm.
where it would track, okay, how much of this, the verbiage you're sharing is actually taken from another source, and it's able to evaluate that. So turnitin.com, they may eventually one day hear this if we get big enough to say, okay, let's also incorporate the degree to which AI is being utilized. So I like that. And I like your second point too, where rather than focusing in on the paper itself or the presentation or the video, whatever it
Hmm.
may be focusing in on the prompt.
Hmm.
So that is where, okay, this is my unique contribution as a
Yeah,
student into how this was. That's really interesting. I
yeah.
haven't heard anybody talk about that yet, but I'm not a student anymore. So yeah,
No, because there's some value to that.
yeah,
Like what, also like how did you train it? Like
yeah, that's a
there's
good point.
skills there that we want to, I think, appreciate or value that gives you that output. So it's AI is a machine.
Yeah.
I tweaked it. I did this. I mean, I'm trying to think maybe like a good analogy is NASCAR or something. I mean, how much
Yeah,
of it's the driver, how much it is of the car, you
that's a
know?
good question. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, yeah, you could say, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, ultimately, you need a good car and you need a good driver. And it's
Hmm.
that collaboration, that connection, that relationship between the driver and the car that ultimately gives you the result. Same thing with AI and the person.
Yeah.
It's that collaboration between the AI and the person that gives you that result because you might have other people using AI, and the results are pretty bad, for example,
Yeah.
or pretty lengthy, pretty unpolished.
Yeah.
And it's because they probably didn't train their AI well enough.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately there has to be some kind of balance between those two areas.
That's an interesting concept, and I'm going to keep an eye out for it because I think you're onto something, Frank. I think there's going to be, seriously, like, I think you're seeing the future where
Yeah.
there's the thing we're producing and then the prompt or the approach we used to produce it. I think both of those are now going to be, this
Hmm.
is my work that I'm submitting. I bet you that's probably going to be the case. I like that. I like that. Yeah. Now transitioning over, so we have AI bringing it back into the public sector. You're a trainer. You've trained various organizations to be able to leverage AI in the workplace,
Hmm.
in the public workspace. Where do you see AI having, a role? Where can I use it if I'm a public sector employee? Where can I have the opportunity to use AI in what I do?
I mean, to answer your question, I would just say wherever intelligence and thought can
Yeah.
be used, AI can be used as well. I mean, and that's pretty much everything, pretty much all knowledge-based type of work or workers that we do here. It can be applied pretty much on, and like especially in HR. I mean, there's not much manual work in HR unless you're trying to do a performance exam for maintenance, but pretty much or design one at least. But there's not much manual work. But ultimately, and if it entails intelligence or thought, AI can be used. So I know it's very broad.
Yeah.
But the key thing is then what I say after that is like, okay, let's start off with your biggest pain points. What are your biggest pain points? And so what I hear a lot is screening apps. That's a big one because you get like 80 applications, for
Yeah.
example, or it could be hundreds that just takes so much time to evaluate. Another one I heard was monitoring people taking tests. That's another one because staff, what happens is that depending on the tests, some of them are continuously monitored. They want to have to see if AI can help that out because we want to make sure they're not searching the web or there's somebody else in that room. Maybe AI can help with that, and definitely AI can help with that. In fact. So identify your biggest pain points. Another area I've heard is updating our manuals, recruitment, re, refining and making our job bulletins very engaging, developing social media posts. The, I think it's just that people are still learning what AI is capable of doing. And it's all about how you train it, how you prompt it, and honestly, if you're really good at that, you can have it do pretty much anything that you are doing in your HR job.
Gotcha. So it's almost the question is instead of what can AI do, it's what can't AI do? So it can
Yeah.
virtually okay. So it's almost flipping that on its head. So I'm thinking as you were sharing, review applications, make more attractive recruitment bulletins. What are your thoughts on potentially having it create either interview questions or an assessment in general? Can it?
Yeah, I mean, I've used it for that. I've done it.
Okay.
I've done it. So it's all about training your
Okay.
AI. And I've done it where I uploaded a lot of training material. I'll say the job description. I included, let's say, our competency dictionary. I included also, I trained it where so this is the magic formula. I mean, for
Yeah.
your listeners, and
Let's hear it. Yeah.
so I got an output from another AI to say, okay, of these competencies, which types of interview questions are best to use to assess these competencies?
Interesting.
So it gives me a certain output, and so so what I do, I get that output, I put it to the let's say Claude or ChatGPT model that I'm already using.
Yeah.
And then I uploaded that information, and I go, okay, write me 8 interview questions that adequately measures the competencies for this job. It's okay to allow the questions to measure multiple or more than one competency. And so I say it's allowed because sometimes what it says or it thinks that you want is like one question per competency. But
Mhm.
no, some questions can measure multiple competencies. So I'm giving it permission that like these questions can assess multiple competencies. And then using the information I gave you, the job description, the competency dictionary, and also some guidance of which type of interview questions, there's situational, there's behavioral,
Mhm.
it's best to assess these competencies. Write me 8 questions. All right, so I did that. And I'll tell you, I did it for a technology job. The
Yeah.
hiring authority, the technical expert came over, looked at those questions. He said, these are great.
Spot on.
These were
Yeah.
great, spot on questions. So that gave me validation. And
Yeah.
not only I did also a performance simulation exam
Okay.
two exercises that they need to complete. I created that using the similar format and formula that I just described. I had the technology director come on over and review that. This is spot on. He
Yeah.
even asked me how I did it, and I told him I'm
Yeah.
very transparent, by the way.
Yeah.
I think this is something that anybody should learn. I don't. I mean, I get it. This is definitely a superpower, and people think I have a superpower, which is great. But
Yeah.
I want, honestly, I want everybody to learn this, and that's the whole purpose of my training. Is like when I started using AI, I was like, I really thought everybody was using it.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was the only one. I mean, it gave me the impression when I started using it, like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is great. I'm sure everybody's using it.
Yeah.
And then when I came across people, high level, highly competent, people on the top of their field, uh, individuals, and I asked them about how much they use AI, a lot of them said no, or
Hmm.
it's limited. I
Yeah.
was surprised. And this
Yeah.
is pretty consistent. And I'm like, oh wow, not that many people are using it. And then I hear what I hear a lot too. These are again highly competent
Hmm.
captains of their industry individuals, all right, highly regarded individuals. And then I hear them, I'm like a fly on the wall in the meeting. I'm
Yeah.
not, I mean, I have my video off and I'm just, the topic was like, hey, how are you using AI? And then I hear people, and again, these are top people. Oh, I used it a few times, didn't get the results I wanted. Oh, it was all right. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
my
It's
goodness.
wild. Yeah.
I'm thinking if they're experiencing that, that's other people, a majority of other people are probably experiencing the same thing. And so that's just led me to believe, wow, we need to get training. We need to get the training out there. We need to teach people how to use it. Yeah. And so what I do in my trainings, real quick, I ask people who plays an instrument in this room. Who plays an instrument? Raise your hand if you play an instrument. And so a few people raise their hand. Oh, when I ask them, what do you play? I'll play the piano. I'll play the flute. Somebody said I play the guitar. And then I asked them, okay, when you first started playing, how did you sound?
Yeah.
And then
Not good.
and they say, well, yeah, not good. I didn't sound good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, exactly. Exactly. You're making my point. So anytime you're interacting with AI, you're not going to be good at it. And then I ask them, how did you get better at playing piano, flute, or guitar? How did you get better? They go, practice. There you go. So my point is this, if you want to get better at using AI, you got to practice. And believe me, it's worth practicing because I demonstrated in front of so many people where it could be the job analysis plan, it could be assessments, simulations, interview questions, and I go, look, you do this, you do this, you do this, you submit it, and I go, is this good? I asked them, is this good? And they're looking at it with astonishment. I'm not
Yeah.
even kidding.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, that is good. Because sometimes I need that validation myself too, and I'm like, I don't know, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
And I show them in the big screen, and I go, is this good? Is this going to save you time? They all say yes. You see a lot of you see people nodding their head. Yes, it's going to save me time. And another thing I ask them, is this better? I know you need to refine it, but is this better than nothing? At least better than nothing. And they say, yes, this is better than nothing. And it gives you a head start. Look, it's not perfect. It's not going to solve every single problem, but it's going to get really close to solving a lot of your problems. It's going to expedite things. It's going to give you better things faster and better quality. And it's really rare for a technology to just all of a sudden, I mean, well, AI has been around for many years, by the way.
Yeah.
I do this in my trainings and presentations, but finally it's much more accessible. but it's really rare for a technology that will increase your productivity, get things done much and faster and better quality. It's really rare that those two, at least these components are increased with this new technology.
And to your point about expediting processes, so I could imagine, without using AI, it may take a couple of days, couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months to come up with those robust, those strong questions, especially potentially in a field where we may not be the experts. Whereas AI was able to kind of condense all of that work into, what would you say, maybe a day or two?
My goodness. I mean, what I've heard, I heard like this could take this. I mean, for something that could take me a day, it could take me an hour or 30 minutes to do with AI.
Gotcha.
That's how powerful it is.
Yeah.
Seriously, think
Yeah.
about it. And then, like, okay, now you can use that time to refine it, edit it, make it better. And so, like, okay, now you have this extra time. Now you can use that extra time for other things, other priorities,
Mhm.
other things that you never had the chance to work with. And I'll give you an example. I start in many of my presentations. I start off, what if you have this superpower that you could get things done faster and better quality? Like, how would you use it? And so ultimately it means that, they use it for a variety of things, but also what things that pop up in that discussion is that things get placed in the back burner because they don't have the time. Now with AI, excuse me, you have ability to reduce time and get things done faster, better quality. Finally, have the time to do things that were placed in the back burner, like manuals.
Yeah.
Things that
The
always get placed in the back burner because there's always competing priorities. There's always something more pressing. There's always something that has a deadline because manuals and policies, they don't have much deadlines. Like you got to update it. Okay, sure, I'll do it next week.
and it's always next week.
It's
Always.
always next week.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
perpetual next
yeah,
week.
yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
and so finally, you're like, oh, I can use AI, and AI is awesome with manuals, text. You can definitely update them really quickly too.
So with AI, it sounds like it's a very powerful tool. It sounds like virtually it can do almost anything we could think of. So with this next question is kind of a two-parter. One is, what is your perception on the power, or how would you relate the use of this technology, the emergence of this technology, if you can come up with an analogy in terms of just how groundbreaking it would be? So that's kind of part of the
Mhm.
question number one. And part of the question number two is, if it can do anything that we can do, what does the workplace look like for us in the future if AI is doing it for us?
Yeah, so I think the first part of your question is asking, like, is there any parallels or
Correct.
analogies out
Hmm.
there? I mean, the only parallels I have is like, I mean, I'll bring up a number of examples, like the sewing machine, the automobile, the digital age where the internet broke through. So let me use the internet.
Yeah.
So a lot of people thought that emails, internet was gonna make things so much efficient. And yeah, I would agree. Things we have advanced so much. Also, I'll be specific. Emails. You think emails was gonna reduce or eliminate paper? No, that hasn't been the case. That has not been the
Yeah.
case.
The floppy disk was supposed to do it. Now we don't even use floppy
Floppy
disks.
disk. Yeah, it's. I remember when the internet started to be very like a big thing. It was everywhere, and then you had your like different speeds. Like you have your like 24, like 14 fork modems, then the 56K modems, and broadband, and then I have like what do you call that laser? I forgot. Fiber optics. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, you have all these speeds. So the internet was quite of an interesting breakthrough revolution. It did revolution a lot of different things. I mean, we have Wi-Fi, we have cell phones, we're all constantly connected. So it's hard to have a parallel because AI is just so different. But it's going to proliferate slowly. I think. Well, I take it back. AI has been expanding quite quickly, but it's hard to say how it's going to evolve. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I mean, but revolutions is we're not new to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like automobiles, major revolution from horses to automobiles,
Yeah.
and it created. Okay, we need to create roads now. We need to create mechanics, or at least mechanic shop. There's a whole new industry of automobiles, like customized, different brands, etc. Um, Internet. God, who would have thought you can turn off your light using your cell phone? I
Yeah.
mean, we have apps. We have Uber.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought when internet first came out that we're going to have Uber?
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought about that? Who would have thought? I mean, we just saw web pages. I'm like, great, you can have your web pages. Who would have thought you could do shopping on the internet?
Yeah. Shows
Seriously.
up at your door next
Yeah,
day.
who would
Yeah.
have thought about that? Who would have thought like it's like, okay, the Sears catalog is going to be obsolete now.
Yeah.
Everybody's buying Amazon now, pretty
Yeah.
much. Um, so, I mean, there's just so many things that we don't know where this is going. All we know that this is a technology that can be applied on different things, and you have to be ready because people are going to come in with all their creative ideas and take it to different directions. So I think you just want to just be just knowing that's how revolutions has happened in the past. So it's hard to predict, but that's just this unpredictable nature of it that where humans are just going to take it who knows where. And that's the fascinating thing about AI is that it's really limited by your imagination, meaning that it's there's minimal boundaries. There's no boundaries pretty much. It's going to be taken to different places. Now, the
Gotcha.
second part of your question is like, you think AI, since AI can do everything, what's the point? Like, it's going to pretty
Yeah.
much replace everything.
Yeah.
Um, yes and no. I think ultimately, yeah, it may replace certain jobs, but it's also going to create new jobs. Similar to kind of like automobiles, it created like mechanic shops. It created AutoZone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Pet
I
boys.
yeah, Pip Boys. I mean, it's going to create a new industry. It's going to go through a restructuring process where we're going to be repurposed. Our jobs are going to be repurposed, and so also, I mean, the dentist brought this up too when we were talking about AI yesterday. He said, "Yeah, AI is going to make you do more with less." I get it, and probably reduce inflation. But I think we have unlimited demands,
Yeah.
and our demands, our expectations are going to be increasing too. Now that we know what AI is capable of doing, we're going to be asking for more. We're going to be demanding more. So I don't see it that it's going to eliminate jobs. There's always going to be a role. Ultimately, I mean, like another example, let's say robotics. Let's say AI is integrated in robotics. You're going to have robotic shops. You're going to have people tweaking their robotics. You can have robotic accessories. You're going to have, okay, put these shock absorbers, make your robot jump higher or something, or
Yeah. Yeah.
protect it.
Give it four arms.
There's robotic chrome polisher.
Yeah.
I'm just, or like how to best train, or how to tweak your robot. I mean, there's just gonna be so many different things that it's gonna produce. I mean, I'll give it me. AI is giving me an opportunity to do AI trainings. So that's another field I'm doing. I'm telling you, it's just going to restructure. So if you look in the past, how our revolutions have evolved and have taken place, pretty much, the internet has created a whole new revolutionized field of opportunities.
Yeah.
Sewing machines. People thought that, people sewing and knitting is going to be out of the job. Yeah, but now we have clothes everywhere. So we have these automated machines. but we focus on other things. The invention of the washing machine, for example. Yeah, we don't have to take time to wash our own clothes manually.
Down by the river.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So now that we have a washing machine,
Yeah.
what are we going to do with our time? We can actually do other things. Yeah, you can hang out, go to the beach, play, etc. Go, see entertainment, go to a Dodger game, whatever. But
There we go.
ultimately, it frees you up to do other things which can also produce more jobs. It depends on what it is. Because
Gotcha.
maybe I'll have a higher demand for other things. Now I have more time. I want to go to see a play. I want to see a musical. Or I open up my own business of something, which
Yeah.
creates other jobs. So
Yeah.
it's just a restructuring, a role repurposing process that's going to happen.
And here's the last question I have for you today, Frank. So on I303, the approach we like to take is we like to provide interesting insights and oddball opinions. So I'm going to throw out an interesting scenario,
Okay.
and there's no right or wrong, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So with I have a feeling, much like you pointed out, AI is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of kind of the manual or grunt work. So it's going to free us up to do a lot of other creative or things that fuel our passions. With that said, though, I think the how can I say this? The responsibility or the benefit of that is going to concentrate into very few companies. So I think there's going to be few individuals who have a lot, then there's going to be a lot of us who have very little. I think there's going to be a little bit of conflict there because more and more power, resources, etc., is going to be concentrated into less and less people. But I think over time, we will. I'm not sure what this is going to look like, but there will be some kind of conflict. There will be some kind of argument, some kind of fighting that's going to happen between these two factions. If we're able to get through that, I think after that point, our future is super bright because every need we can have, every resource we could want, can be produced by AI. No labor is required to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to get past that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is one, am I completely off base? Is my future seeing skills just not making sense at all?
Mm-hmm.
And two, do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I'm leaning toward agreeing with you.
Yep.
That seems to be taking place now, and I think because of just so much investment is needed. Now, in order for AI to work, you need to have these typically what we call NVIDIA type of microchips. And what makes them so different is that they are able to process so many different algorithms at the same time. That's what they use it. They basically in NVIDIA, video cards were mostly used for gaming because of just the high demand of data and processing animation. So they are very equipped from day one to accommodate this big demand for AI technology. And so that's why their stock is just constantly going high because they're chips, but they're expensive. And you need to have a lot of energy. You need to have, because the best AI is going to have a lot of these microchips because it just increases with the algorithm processing. It makes them fast. You also need a lot of energy. You need to have these what we call like chip farms, that I think they're going to be building with these massive fans because you need to cool down the microchips so much because so much processing power is taking place. So yeah, so there's going to be pretty much a situation where these probably a few or a handful of companies that have that massive amounts of investments are capable of generating these type of systems and farms that gives you the best AI. I was watching Sam Altman like yesterday, and he is expanding. He was talking about how ChatGPT or OpenAI is expanding so fast, like it's hard for them to keep up. The demand is just so high. So yeah, I would agree. I would agree that it's probably going to be the case. But the good thing is that there seems to be a competition going on. Not just with ChatGPT, there's also Claude, there's Grok, which is from Elon Musk. There's also DeepSeek from China. Perplexity, I'm not sure. I think that's US based too. So right now you kind of see a fighting going on, or like who has the better mousetrap situation. And I can relate to a previous experience, like when operating systems was taking place. So you had like Windows and you have Apple. They were competing at that time too. I think, yeah, I think it's probably heading in that direction. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Ultimately, I would say you always want to have an environment that allows for competition. You don't want to have these monopolies. Now, Google has been known to be very monopolistic, okay?
Yeah.
Windows as well.
Yeah.
There's been a whole history of legal conflict from these companies. I mean, they do a lot of great things. They produce produce great apps and services, but it needs to have at least at least a fair, equal playing field for others to be involved. So I think that's where governments can play a part to make sure
Yeah,
that every
that makes
company
sense.
has a fair chance of competing against these big companies. We're talking about Google, we're talking
Mhm.
about OpenAI, we're talking about Microsoft too. They're in the game too. So I think there's going to be a situation like that. Now, I mean, these are tech giants, and I think there's a lot of it that we want to make sure that they're regulated that in a way that they don't uh, consume their competition too, or create barriers for their competition, artificial barriers for their competition. So ultimately, my answer to that is, yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think it's a good thing. I mean, we're getting awesome stuff right now from them, which is great because they're competing against each other, and that's why we're getting great services because they're
Yeah.
competing.
Okay.
But as if you're only going to get like a few winners or companies providing the service, then there's not going to be much of incentive for them to compete. And so we need to have some kind of equal playing field for all.
Gotcha. Well, Frank, this was definitely a very interesting conversation. I appreciate you taking time out of your day, taking time out of keeping an eye on students using AI as they submit their homework.
Yeah.
If people wanted to connect with you, where can they reach out?
I'm in LinkedIn, so you could just type in Dr. Frank Olmos on LinkedIn. You could definitely go there. I'm also on Instagram, but ideally LinkedIn. You could also email me at drfrankolmos@gmail.com. You could also email me there, but if you need to reach me, LinkedIn or just by email.
Perfect. All right, Frank. Well, this was a great conversation. I appreciate you being on the podcast, and you have a good day.
Thank you.